My name is Korn. I am a Zolthian biologist specializing in interspecies behavioral defense mechanisms, or at least, that's what my job title says on the Galactic University payroll. In reality, I spend most of my time babysitting arrogant younglings from every corner of the known sectors, all pretending they're future conquerors of the cosmos while struggling to spell chlorophyll. This semester, the Galactic Defense Ethology class was full. That meant trouble. And by trouble, I mean 1,000 egos and 0 common sense crammed into one lecture hall. I walked into the amphitheater, my tendrils flicking with mild irritation, and saw them, representatives of 87 different species, each with their own idea of what power meant. Some had claws sharp enough to slice through armor. Others could crush starship hulls with their limbs. A few didn't even have limbs, they just vibrated menacingly, and then there was the human, yes, the human. He sat in the back, feet propped up on the desk like a smug star pirate, his eyes half-lidded in that lazy confidence humans seem to be born with. His name was Danvers Holt. I still remember his face because it had that infuriating smirk, like he was perpetually on the verge of saying something both brilliant and stupid. Started my lecture as usual, projecting my voice through the hall. Welcome, students. Today we begin our analysis of natural weapons of sentient species. Each of you has evolved some form of biological defense, shaped by millennia of survival. Some rely on venom, others on armor, speed, camouflage. I gestured toward a massive creature in the front row, a thick-skinned Vraxian. For example, our friend here possesses dermal plating capable of deflecting low-yield plasma fire. Impressive, yes? The Vraxian puffed up proudly, his chest glowing faintly with bioluminescence. Now, I continued, pacing along the holographic board, today's exercise is simple. I will ask each of you to describe your species' natural weapon. Not technology. Not training. Just the thing nature gave you to survive. Easy, right? Apparently not. The first student, a Shrellian insectoid, clicked its mandibles. My natural weapon is venom potent enough to paralyze a broke beast in seconds. I nodded. Efficient. You evolved predation and defense. Excellent. Next, a reptilian Calvith hissed proudly. My scales can reflect laser heat. Nothing burns me. Good. Resilience. Another survival trait. Then came the avian representative, a sleek Renari with obsidian feathers. My kind can strike at speeds exceeding sound. Our talons slice through armor. Formidable. Speed and precision. On and on it went. Each species flaunted their strengths like peacocks on parade. Finally, it was the human's turn. Danvers Holt yawned. Actually yawned. The audacity. I fixed all 6 of my eyes on him. Human. You've been uncharacteristically quiet. Perhaps you'd like to share what your species' natural weapon is? The room went silent. Every alien leaned forward, some curious, some amused. Humans were still relatively new to the Galactic Concord, and everyone wanted to see what made them so odd. Danvers straightened, rubbed his chin, and smirked. My natural weapon, he repeated, as if I'd asked what his favorite beverage was. Oh, that's easy. He pointed at his own skull, spite. The class burst into laughter. Even my translator hesitated, unsure whether to process the word as humor or delusion, blinked all 6 eyelids slowly. Spite? He nodded casually. Yeah. Pure, undiluted spite. The laughter grew louder. The Renari nearly fell off its perch, screeching. The Vraxian's rumbling chuckle made the floor vibrate. Spite, I repeated, my voice dry. You mean bitterness? Hostility? That's your weapon? Danvers just grinned wider. Not bitterness. Motivation. Difference is, bitterness makes you sulk. Spite makes you win. Now, I'd heard many absurdities in my career, students claiming they could weaponize love, or laughter, or pheromones, but this was new, and how, precisely, I asked, does this spite manifest as a defense mechanism? He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Simple. When something tries to kill us, we don't just fight back. We make sure it regrets ever being born. You can beat us, vaporize us, throw us in a sun, but if there's one cell of us left that remembers why we're mad, you're in trouble. The room quieted. The laughter faded into an uneasy hum. Danvers continued, his tone still light, but his eyes? Those were different. Cold. Focused. We've gone to wars that should have wiped us out, and we won because someone said we couldn't. We climbed mountains just because they looked smug about being tall. We crossed galaxies because the universe told us we shouldn't exist this far from home. That's not survival instinct, Professor. That's spite. The silence was suffocating. Even I, who'd taught hundreds of species, had to pause. There was a conviction in his words, a quiet madness wrapped in humor. Finally, I chuckled dryly. So, your weapon is psychological. Psychological. Emotional. Stubborn. Call it what you want, he said, shrugging. It's why we're still around. I moved to the next student, pretending I wasn't unsettled. But that word, spite, echoed in my head all lecture. The following week, we conducted live simulations. The purpose, to observe natural defenses under stress. Students were paired randomly and dropped into controlled hollow environments with varying threats, acid storms, predators, vacuum exposure. Danvers, of course, got paired with a Draxel, one of the most physically dominant species known. Twice his size, 4 arms, and the temperament of an angry volcano. I didn't expect the human to last 2 minutes. The simulation began. The environment flickered into a crimson desert under 2 suns. Wind howled. The Draxel roared, pounding its chest. Danvers stood there, hands in his pockets, as if deciding where to get lunch. The Draxel charged. I leaned forward, waiting for the human to flee, or be flattened. Instead, Danvers sidestepped, barely dodging, and grabbed a handful of sand. He tossed it into the Draxel's eyes. The class gasped. Cheap trick. Primitive. Brilliant, the Draxel bellowed, blinded, thrashing. Danvers moved fast, climbing up its back like a parasite and striking its neck with what I recognized as a self-taught chokehold. But here's the unsettling part, his face wasn't furious. It wasn't even focused. It was amused. He looked like someone getting revenge on a personal level. The Draxel fell to one knee, roaring. The simulation ended. Danvers released the hold and dusted off his clothes. So, Professor, he called, can I mark Spite as an official weapon on the form? The entire hall was silent again. I reviewed the footage later. The telemetry showed his adrenaline levels spiking far beyond normal limits, dangerously high. He should have collapsed. Instead, he became faster, more efficient, more deliberate. Every motion was fueled by something more than fear or instinct. That night, I found myself in my office, replaying his words over and over. We make sure it regrets ever being born. Humans were always strange, fragile bodies, slow reflexes, minimal armor. Yet they thrived in places where even apex predators refused to go. How, maybe this was it. This spite. A few days later, I received clearance for a field trip. The class was to visit an abandoned training moon once used for military survival exercises. Harmless enough, controlled conditions, automated threats, safety fields. Perfect for observation, so I thought. We arrived via shuttle. The landscape stretched barren and gray, a wasteland of stone ridges and metallic ruins. The air was thin but breathable. I briefed the students. We will conduct a final simulation today. Teams of 3 will navigate to the beacon tower and extract a data core. Simple objective. Minimal risk. Danvers stretched lazily. Minimal risk, huh? That's how horror movies start. I sighed. It's not a horror movie, Mr. Holt. He smirked. Yet. The teams dispersed. At first, everything went smoothly. But then, halfway through the exercise, the sensors detected movement. Not simulated. Real. Something else was on the moon. Before I could abort the mission, the comms filled with static and screams. Professor. There's something out here. It's not part of the program. I switched the hollow feed. A dark mass was moving through the fog fast, low to the ground. Metallic limbs. Non-registered signatures, automated defense drones. Old war relics that were never decommissioned. Panic spread through the students. Species known for courage turned to chaos, scattering in every direction. The Renari tried to fly and got hit midair. The Vraxian's armor cracked under plasma fire. Retreat to the shuttle. I shouted, and then, through the haze, I saw him, Danvers Holt. He wasn't retreating. He was running toward the drones. I yelled into the calm, human. Fall back. That's an order. His voice crackled through, half laughing. Can't, Professor. These things pissed me off. He reached a wrecked vehicle, tore a metal pipe from its frame, and sprinted headlong into the swarm. Plasma bolts seared past him. One grazed his shoulder. He barely flinched. He slammed the pipe into the first drone, smashing its sensor. Sparks exploded. Another lunged. He grabbed its arm, twisted it off, and used it like a weapon. It wasn't strategy. It was vengeance. I watched, horrified and fascinated, as he dismantled machines designed to kill soldiers, screaming, laughing, bleeding, winning. When the smoke cleared, he stood among the wreckage, chest heaving. His arm was burned, his uniform torn, but he was alive. I approached carefully, my tendrils trembling. You could have died. He grinned through bloodied lips. Yeah. That's why it worked. That night, back on the ship, I recorded my report. Observation. Human behavioral response to mortal threat triggers what can only be described as a psychological combustion event. Self-preservation becomes secondary to emotional defiance. The subject channels pain, fear, and rage into determination. The more cornered they are, the more dangerous they become. I paused the recorder, staring at the human through the observation window. He was laughing with the Renari, arm in a sling, still telling jokes. I realized something chilling then. Every species I'd studied evolved weapons to survive. Humans evolved to win, and their weapon wasn't muscle, venom, or claws. It was the fire behind their eyes, the refusal to lose, the weapon called spite, and for the first time in my career. I wasn't sure if I was teaching them, or studying a warning. The aftermath of the moon incident was chaos wrapped in paperwork. The Galactic University's administration nearly had a collective aneurysm when they learned that 32 drones, classified military relics, had been reduced to scrap by one injured human wielding a bent pipe. Naturally, I was summoned, the Council of Academic Oversight, a lineup of 12 beings who had never once left their climate-controlled towers, demanded an explanation. Their faces flickered across the hollow display like a lineup of angry deities. Professor Korn, hissed Chancellor Vurok, a gelatinous entity with a voice like a bubbling swamp, you were responsible for that human, yes? Explain how one primitive mammal destroyed an entire defense grid that has stood for 2 centuries. I tried to remain composed. He improvised. The council erupted into overlapping chatter, squeaks, growls, clicks, and vibrations of disbelief. Improvised, barked another counselor. With what? Raw determination. I hesitated. Essentially, yes. That silence that followed was worse than any shouting. 12 scholars, representing 12 of the most advanced species in the galaxy, just stared at me, aghast, offended, and perhaps a little afraid. After a moment, Chancellor Vurok spoke again, voice dripping with sarcasm. You expect us to believe that one unaugmented human triumphed through attitude? I sighed. Not attitude. Spite. Vurok blinked his 3 eyes in confusion. Define. I took a slow breath. Spite is when they're hurt, cornered, insulted, or underestimated, and instead of folding, they light themselves on fire just to prove you wrong. The Chancellor made a sound that was probably disgust. Unstable. Correct, I said. And unstoppable. They dismissed me after that, partly because they didn't believe me, partly because they didn't want to, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. That night, I visited the medical bay. Holt was sitting on the bed, arm freshly bandaged, a data pad in one hand, a nutrition bar in the other. He was reading a maintenance report like it was a love letter. Professor, he greeted, grin as bright as ever. You come to congratulate me or arrest me? Neither, I said, stepping closer. You're supposed to be resting. He waved it off. Pain's just weakness leaving the body. Or maybe the body leaving the body. Hard to tell sometimes. I studied him quietly. His vitals still showed residual stress spikes. Heart rate irregular. Blood chemistry distorted from adrenaline. By all logic, he should have been comatose. Danvers, I asked slowly, why did you run toward the drones? You could have escaped. He tilted his head, smirking. Because they shot at my classmates. You don't mess with my team. Also, one of them clipped my shoulder. Couldn't let that slide. That's vengeance. That's accountability, Professor. He chuckled. Spite with direction. He leaned back, stretching. You see, you aliens keep thinking weapons have to be physical. Sharp, heavy, glowing, something you can hold. But the real stuff? The dangerous stuff? It's in here. He tapped his temple. It's the switch that flips when someone tells us we can't. I frowned. But that kind of thinking, it's destructive. He grinned. Exactly. That's why it works. The more I spoke with him, the more I realized something terrifying. Humans didn't use spite as a tool, they lived with it as fuel. Every obstacle was personal. Every defeat was temporary. Every victory had to be earned out of sheer defiance, and they laughed through all of it. 2 weeks later, the university decided to turn the incident into a controlled study. Their reasoning? If humans can weaponize emotion, we must quantify it. Ah yes. The great galactic tradition, if something scares us, we put it in a lab. I was appointed lead researcher. Holt volunteered to be the primary subject. Of course he did, the experiment was simple on paper. We created simulated threat environments, no real harm, only projected danger. The goal was to measure emotional triggers and neurological activity. In the first test, Holt faced a simulated predator, a massive holographic apex beast. He didn't flinch. He didn't even grab the stun baton we offered. He just muttered, "You look like my ex's dog," and charged it. Result, increased heart rate, 0 fear response. And the second test, we simulated total isolation for 20 hours. Result, boredom, sarcasm, and 47 improvised songs about bad cafeteria food. And the third test, we projected the voice of the Chancellor insulting humanity's intelligence. Result, laughter, followed by Holt drawing a mustache on the holographic face and saluting sarcastically. After each test, the sensors showed the same pattern, neural activity spiking in regions associated with aggression and reward simultaneously. Humans derived satisfaction from opposition. Resistance triggered motivation instead of despair. It was unnerving. By the 10th trial, other species were observing through the viewing glass. Some mocked him, others whispered nervously. One student, a Lithorian with crystalline armor plates, scoffed loudly. "Your kind are reckless. You mistake madness for courage." Holt turned, still smiling. "And you mistake safety for strength." That line silenced the whole room. Later that night, he came to my office unannounced. No knocking, just waltzed in like he owned the place. "You looked like you had questions," he said, dropping into a chair. "I did. Hundreds of them. But I asked the one that mattered. Danvers, what happens when your species runs out of things to fight?" He laughed, low and genuine. "Then we fight boredom. And when you win, then we find something else to get mad at." He said it so casually that it chilled me. Humans didn't thrive despite conflict, they thrived because of it. They were evolution's bad joke that somehow worked. The following week, the council ordered a joint field test, 5 species working together to neutralize a rogue AI station near the neutral border. It was meant to demonstrate cooperative tactics under stress. Holt was chosen as human representative. I was assigned as scientific observer. When we arrived at the station, the situation deteriorated instantly. The AI, long dormant, had reactivated its defenses. Automated turrets, drones, electromagnetic storms, it was chaos. The Renari scout panicked and fled. The Lithorian froze. The Vraxian charged and was instantly pinned by suppressive fire. Amidst the blinding flashes, I saw Holt, grinning. He moved with reckless precision, shouting orders, dragging the others behind cover. "Hey, Sparkles. Use your armor to reflect that beam." "Yeah, just like that." "Big guy, left flank. You, bird, stop screaming and shoot." They actually listened. When a plasma bolt tore through the corridor and exploded near us, Holt dove over me, shielding my body with his own. The blast seared his back. He didn't even scream. He just hissed through his teeth. "Okay, that stung." "Danvers." I shouted, horrified. "Still good," he coughed. "Spite's still online." Somehow, through sheer stubborn madness, they reached the control core. Holt hotwired the main terminal with strict wires and a prayer. When the system asked for an authorization code, he typed one word, "NO." It worked. The defenses shut down. When the smoke cleared, the others looked at him like he was some kind of legend. The Lithorian bowed slightly. The Vraxian slapped his shoulder hard enough to bruise 3 ribs. Didn't know whether to applaud or quarantine him. Back on the ship, I submitted my final report. Subject: Homo sapiens. Conclusion: humanity's primary weapon is a volatile emotional catalyst known as spite. It manifests as defiance against limitation, fear, and probability itself. While biologically fragile, humans compensate through mental resilience and unpredictability. When cornered, they do not calculate, they decide. And that decision is almost always no. I ended the recording, exhaled, and added one last note: recommendation: never tell a human something is impossible. You may regret the results. Weeks passed. The council eventually honored Holt with a commendation for unorthodox bravery. They called him a model of adaptive aggression. I called him a headache with legs. On the day he left the university, he stopped by my office one last time. He was wearing that same mischievous grin. "Leaving already?" I asked. "Yeah. Got a job offer. Something about security consulting for the Terran fleet. Apparently, they like my emotional consistency." He winked. "Consistency? You're unpredictable." "Exactly," he said, standing. "Consistency in chaos." I chuckled. "You know, Danvers, I still think your species is insane." He smirked. "And that's why we'll win." He started to walk away, then paused at the door. "Oh, and Professor?" "Yes. Thanks for not flunking me. I considered it." He laughed aloud, genuine, contagious, and left. That was the last time I saw him. A year later, I was stationed on a research vessel orbiting Velan Prime when the news came through. A Terran fleet, Holt's fleet, had engaged a hostile armada twice their size. The enemy's technology was superior. Their numbers overwhelming. Logic dictated annihilation, but the humans didn't retreat. They fought for 72 straight hours. When their ships ran out of ammunition, they rammed them. When the engines failed, they turned the wreckage into weapons, and when the enemy demanded surrender, the Terran commander, Danvers Holt, broadcasted his response across the system: "Spite doesn't surrender." The transmission ended with static. The enemy fleet? Gone. Wiped from existence. No one knows exactly how. The debris field suggests an intentional overload of reactor cores, synchronized across the human ships. It should have been suicide. Instead, somehow, the Terrans survived, barely. I requested the logs later. The final line, written in Holt's hand, read, "Let history remember this, if you ever corner a human, pray they don't get motivated." I closed the file and sat there for a long time, all 6 eyes fixed on the star outside, and all my years of study. I'd catalogued countless biological weapons, fangs, toxins, claws, plasma glands. But none terrified me like the human mind, because where every other creature fought to live, humans fought to win, even against logic. Even against fate. Even against themselves, and their greatest weapon was that impossible, unreasonable, magnificent thing called spite. Ended my log there, saving the file with one simple title: Do not provoke the humans.